How did a young woman with absolutely nothing go on to become one of the greatest and best-selling authors of all time, and then risk it all in the late hours of a single night? This is the stunning story of JK Rowling. In 1997, an unknown novelist had her book published after being rejected by 11 publishers. But they only printed 500 copies. Most of those went to libraries, but 30 years later, she had sold 600 million copies, made $7 billion from the books alone, and earned over $1 billion herself. The book was, of course, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and the writer was JK Rowling. But that night, in 2018, something happened, and JK Rowling was at risk of destroying her reputation. How does a great black American blues singer of the 1930s called Leadbelly, a like on Twitter, and a letter by actor Daniel Radcliffe linked to the threat of cancellation of one of the most loved and cherished children's authors of all time? The threat began long after an 11-year-old Daniel Radcliffe stepped into Harry's shoes and met Dumbledore. But 18 years after that, JK Rowling found herself at risk of being cancelled and accused of being anti-woke. This is the shocking story of how one of the most loved, hugely successful writers in the world has divided her fans and created a global controversy about identity politics and protecting women's rights and freedom of speech and cancel culture. Let's go back to the night it all began. In 2018, JK Rowling lay in bed scrolling through Twitter and read a tweet that said trans people are men in dresses. She said, "I absent-mindedly liked instead of screenshotting." That single like was the beginning. Many of the trans community were hurt, angry. For her, it was when harassment began. That click exploded into a global gladiatorial contest by those for and against JK Rowling. Back in the 90s, some American states wanted her books burnt as portraying evil sorcery against God. Now, in the arena of social media, many of her ex-fans and detractors wanted her cancelled for being anti-woke. But what was actually going on? On the one side, woke is a protest for social justice and has delivered profound change. On the other side, it's led to JK's need to fight for freedom of speech and for women to have a lived reality as women, equality, rights, spaces. Her life changed when her mother, Anne, was diagnosed with a virulent strain of multiple sclerosis when she was 15. Her mother was incapacitated, couldn't work, and died young. JK wrote her first story, Rabbit, at 6, and, later wanting to study, was rejected by Oxford University. She got married, but experienced domestic abuse and left. She eked out a living for years and began to write. She was a single mother, had to feed 2 children with barely a penny, but never stopped writing day after day. 11 publishers rejected her. 7 years later, one took a chance. Today, her books have sold millions. Then there's the movies, theme parks, merchandise, and a brand new TV series in the works. She became immensely wealthy and in 2011 alone gave $160 million to charities that help children in need, people with serious medical conditions, women who have suffered abuse, and many others worldwide. Her story changed in 2018 with that Twitter click. She became a controversial figure, accused of being anti-trans and anti-woke. It has led to many wanting to cancel her for not agreeing that trans women are women and want the same rights as women. Symbolic of the outcry against JK's views is that 2 of the actors who launched their careers in the Harry Potter franchise spoke out in support of trans rights. Daniel Radcliffe, who acted Harry Potter, tweeted in 2020, "Transgender women are women. Any statement to the contrary erases the identity and dignity of transgender people." In 2024, he said that he was really sad about his rupture with JK Rowling over her anti-trans views. Radcliffe has made over $95 million from acting in the film franchise. Emma Watson, who played Hermione in the movies, also responded to Rowling. "Trans people are who they say they are and deserve to live without being told who they are." The gladiatorial combat blew up the internet. For trans people and their supporters, it was about being free to choose their gender. For JK, it's biology at birth that matters most. Saying, "I know and love trans people, but erasing the concept of sex removes the ability of many to meaningfully discuss their lives. It isn't hate to speak the truth." And also, dress however you please, call yourself whatever you like, sleep with any consenting adult who'll have you. But force women out of their jobs for stating that sex is real? And some ordinary women did lose their jobs for having a similar opinion, like Maya Forstater and Kathleen Stock, but back to them later. Rachel Cohen, director of Stonewall, hit back. Being trans is not about sex changes or clothes, it's about an innate sense of self. The battle exploded. Many felt JK had let down trans people, and she was called cruel by GLAAD, which strongly supports LGBTQ+ rights. Then, in 2023, JK pushed the conflict to the edge of the social media war. A slogan was projected onto the Ministry of Justice building: "Repeat after us, trans women are women." She replied, "No." Sending the internet into a frenzy, JK added, "What may happen when you loosen boundaries around single-sex spaces for women?" So what's really going on here? Trans people are battling for their rights. Sometimes it means invoking cancel culture, calls for boycotts. For JK, that means she needs to fight for free speech and women's rights to protect their spaces, in bathrooms, sports fields, or mostly online, where social media is our gladiatorial space to watch or join in. But the internet is no ancient Roman Colosseum stuck in the annals of history. It's a wild, freewheeling global force which can help fight for social justice. But when views are not considered woke, it can be used as a tool to cancel a person. But what exactly is woke? It all began in 1923, when the Jamaican activist Marcus Garvey first said, "Wake up, Africa," meaning black people wake up. 15 years later, in the depths of Louisiana in 1938, Leadbelly responded to a case where 9 black teenage boys were falsely accused of raping 2 white women. He wrote on his album cover, "I advise everybody, be a little careful, best stay woke," meaning black people, wake up to injustice. Fast forward to 2012, a white man killed Trayvon Martin, a black teenager. The Black Lives Matter movement began and went global. Stay woke became the rallying cry. In 2014, police killed Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. Stay woke became the cautionary watchword of Black Lives Matter. Watch out for police brutality. Woke was originally about being awake to race hate. Today, it has morphed to encompass trans rights and many social justice issues. Specifically, some protest, why won't JK wake up to the struggle for trans rights? Why does she see being a woman as about biology at birth? Others see it as a call to cancel her right to free speech and women's rights to live their hard-won freedoms as women. Not to mention to protect their own spaces, public bathrooms, and sports arenas. JK and others see the woke agenda as stifling this and restricting well-meaning discussions around social issues. So, is cancel culture just our modern social media version of mob mentality? Some say no, it's the voice of the people. Back to JK Rowling. In 2020, she tweeted, "People who menstruate. I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. Someone help me out. Wumban? Wimpened? Woomud?" Needless to say, the internet blew up again, and now there was no ambiguity about her views. But what exactly is cancel culture? Being indicted for crimes like Harvey Weinstein, the sexual predator, is one thing. But being socially judged by group opinion on the battlefield of the internet is another. But for some, it's vital to hold people accountable for what can be harmful words. And can't they see that being woke is really a plea for social justice? But what happens when it crosses the line to bullying? In the 1991 movie New Jack City, the gangster character Nino breaks off with his girlfriend saying, "Cancel that bitch, I'll buy another one." In the movie, to cancel is to kill. It's how pop culture can twist a word. But cancel culture isn't new. Back to those Romans. Emperors they were not exactly fond of, like Nero and Caligula, had their names scrubbed off their gravestones. They called it damnatio memoriae, the curse of memory. And medieval times, they cancelled by public shaming and put people in stocks. It worked. They ostracized those who didn't quite conform to the beliefs of the group. But whilst JK might have her detractors calling to ostracize her, there were also those who argued for her right to free speech and supported her. A letter was signed by 58 famous figures like Ian McEwan and Francis Barber and condemned the onslaught of abuse towards her. In a separate letter by writers, including Margaret Atwood, Salman Rushdie and Noam Chomsky, they observed the restriction of debate and noted a vogue for public shaming and ostracism. They added, "We uphold the value of robust counter-speech, but it is now common to hear calls for severe retribution in response to perceived transgressions of speech." JK went further. When you throw open the doors of bathrooms to any man who feels he's a woman, then you open the door to all men. And also, I believe the majority of trans-identified people not only pose zero threat to others, but are vulnerable. I feel nothing but empathy with trans women who've been abused by men. In 2024, she spoke out against the Scottish Hate Crime Act. She wrote, "Scottish lawmakers have placed higher value on the feelings of men performing their idea of femaleness than on the rights of actual women. The new legislation is wide open to silence those of us speaking out." Today, fault lines in our society have cracked open. People split into woke and anti-woke camps. Leadbelly hoped woke would be a call for awareness. Has it morphed into the Janus face of binaries? Good, bad, right, wrong. Its megaphone? Social media, which urges us to let loose our primal instinct to grab each other's throat and squeeze a voice we disagree with into silence. But how does change really get going? Gay rights, women's votes, equality for black people. These were not won through polite debate. Protests, street battles, fights were needed. For trans people, it's a fight for rights. For JK, it's a fight against censorship and to protect women's rights. She said, "I respect every trans person's right to live any way that feels authentic to them. I'd march with you if you were discriminated against on the basis of being trans." She also said, "If sex isn't real, there's no same-sex attraction. If sex isn't real, the lived reality of women is erased. It isn't hate to speak the truth. So does truth live on shifting sands?" Not so long ago, Galileo was called a heretic and forced into house arrest for 8 years for saying that the Earth was not the center of the universe. We were just another planet orbiting the sun. In 1893, Lady Elizabeth Blount published a review that the Earth was flat based on the writings of a certain influential Samuel Rowbotham. Even the ancient Greeks knew we lived on a sphere. Back to trans people and JK Rowling. What happens when the culture wars lock horns in the mighty cyber arena? She was once asked, "How do you sleep at night knowing you've lost a whole audience from buying your books?" She replied, "I read my most recent royalty checks and find the pain goes away pretty quickly." And it's true. Sales of JK's books have increased tremendously. In 2023, the Scottish Daily Express stated that she had netted £18 million from her publishers and that the gender row failed to dampen the enthusiasm for Harry Potter. That's aside from the movies and merchandise. JK hasn't been toppled, nor have the rich and famous or corporate titans. The mighty have not fallen. Even Donald Trump was unaffected by taped comments on grabbing women by their genitals. He rallied his supporters and was elected president in 2016. Very few celebrities suffer lasting career setbacks. Ellen DeGeneres, who was cancelled in 2020 for accusations of toxic workplace behaviour, has just released a new Netflix comedy special. And the list of formerly cancelled stars who have come back on the scene grows day by day. So how effective is cancel culture? Who is really at risk of losing their job or reputation? It is the ordinary person, the teacher, professor, secretary, who voices an opinion that's out of favour. Like Maya Forstater, who lost her job with the Centre for Global Development, which campaigns against poverty. And Kathleen Stock, a recipient of an OBE for services to higher education, launched the Lesbian Project with Martina Navratilova and was a professor of philosophy at Sussex University. She said a lack of support from colleagues led her to resign. She is also a trustee of the LGB Alliance, which promotes the rights of lesbians, bisexuals, and gay men. The irony is that fallen gladiators, or for us today, cancelled celebrities, find new audiences to monetize their opinions. Infamous stars like Russell Brand and Andrew Tate know that social media has the power to cancel and also platform. But for trans people, this isn't about silencing free speech, but the opposite, a way to combat hate. But for JK, the story is about free speech and protecting women's rights to live as fully equal women. In 2023, a podcast was made of interviews with her. It was called The Witch Trials of JK Rowling. It asks the question, has her speaking her truth morphed into a witch hunt to burn her at the stake of global social media? The internet can inspire, educate, give us the power to voice our opinions instantly. It's the largest publisher the world has ever known and can hold almost as many opinions as there are grains of sand. It can also be incredibly damaging to ordinary people. JK Rowling's story shows the power of social media to rally and divide. But for celebrities at the thin edge of the blade, it doesn't seem to have made a real difference to their careers, has it? But for the ordinary person, a phrase can make them lose their jobs and reputation. As JK wrote, "The truth," Dumbledore sighed, "it is a beautiful and terrible thing. And what will the future hold? You be the judge."